The name of the show is The Way to Go. My name is Alan Bendich. I'm going to be your host, and tonight's guest is Sir Vincent Lyn.
How do you do, Alan?
Welcome to the show.
Great.
One more time.
One more time.
Sir Vincent.
Okay.
So, Vincent.
Yes, sir.
You're an entertainer's entertainer. I mean, it's amazing. Your life is amazing. When did you say, you're an actor? Mm-hmm. You're a world-renowned concert pianist.
Okay.
You're also a humanitarian on the side.
On the side. I just do that on the side.
UN Special Envoy. You're so many different things. Yeah. And yet you could find the time to do all the things you do, right?
And come to see you.
And to come see me as well. So how did you get into acting? I know you're a martial artist, right? So how did you get into acting? I'm curious about that.
Oh, my goodness. Well, many people don't know this, but when I was an actual teenager growing up in London, I obviously I was studying music, and so I went to the Royal College of Music in London. But I also, and many people don't know this, I was studying at RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I went through all the elocution, speaking poetry and prose and Shakespeare, and I actually did that. I started when I was 11, up until when my family emigrated to America. So yeah, but the thing is, in terms of using it in film, that wouldn't happen until much, much later.
So when you were studying acting, I'm curious, because my daughter took acting, not acting, but they had something called the PACE program in Mamaroneck.
Okay.
And it's like performing arts curriculum. So she learned dance, she learned stage design, she did lights, she did directing. Is that what you studied? Did you study all aspects of drama?
No, I did not. The thing is, it wasn't until many, many years later, because obviously I was a graduate of Boston Conservatory of Music, so my focus was piano and composition. Right. So I still wasn't involved in film or acting. I mean, again, it didn't happen until still much later.
But I was talking about when you were talking about the dramatic arts.
No, that was just focus on acting. Right. Yeah. And so, more, theatrical Shakespearean types of acting.
Did that help you, do you think?
No. It didn't help me at all. Not in Hong Kong, not to do the martial arts action films, no. Right.
So how did you, but you were also during that, when did you start taking martial arts, or learning martial arts?
Well, martial arts I started because of my father's side of the family.
Right.
I was 8 years old.
So how did you make the transition? Because I heard stories about Bruce Lee and how everybody was upset that he was, or not everybody, but there was a contingent of martial artists that were upset that he was sensationalizing.
Because he was teaching. Well, no, he wasn't sensationalizing. It's because, he came to America and he started teaching foreigners, Westerners.
Oh, that was the reason.
Yeah. Right. And the traditionalists did not like that. Right. They felt this is a secretive thing and you can't teach the whites or the blacks or whomever. You only can teach Asian, and there were many fights and what have you and things.
But is there in the martial arts community, I mean the strict martial arts community in China or in Asia, throughout Asia, was there any negative feelings towards putting it on film or doing, showing it like that?
No, obviously Hong Kong is the place where martial arts film was truly established. Right. So in America it became, black belt theater, and we saw these old kind of kung fu films, which was their version of our, John Wayne type westerns. Right. Yeah. The plot is always the same, based on revenge. You kill my parents or whomever, and now I'm going to, come back.
So who came up to you and said, I want to make you a star? Who's the person that did that?
Well, it didn't kind of happen like that, though. But it wasn't until 1988. Right. And the film industry in Hong Kong had changed quite dramatically. Right. They weren't doing any more of these period-type films as much. They were using Westerners, and they were doing more kind of, cop
like type exploitation.
Yeah, cop films, drug-related things like that, you know, and so it was just much more international.
Right.
And so I went to Hong Kong in 1988 and was just very, very, very fortunate to, the first film that I starred in was a comeback film for the world-renowned action choreographer director Yuen Wo-ping, and you might not recognize the name, but he was the one who did films like the Matrix trilogy and Kill Bill and Charlie's Angels. So one of the most famous, if not the most famous in the world.
How'd you get the part? I mean, how did that happen?
A friend of mine in New York was a photographer who I'd done a lot of like modeling stuff, and you know, he was Chinese, and he had some connections in Hong Kong, and he said, "Have you ever thought about going to Hong Kong and to do film?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sure, it sounds great, you know." And he basically put me in touch, but it meant me buying the plane ticket, going there, and taking a chance, and that's what I did. I mean, it was not that black and white. It was difficult. It was very difficult, but I got that part. The film was an enormous international hit all across Asia, and because of that one film, it just kind of catapulted me and snowballed into many, many films.
Do you speak Chinese?
Chinese was very good when I was living there, but it gets a bit lazy, so I like to spend a lot of time in Chinatown or restaurants so I can practice all the time.
Yeah, both my kids took Chinese in the Mamaroneck School District. This is a great place to live. So after that, so that was your first movie?
Yeah.
And you were the star of that movie?
Well, co-star.
One of the stars.
Yeah,
one of the stars. So I mean, what was it like the day after? You know, I mean,
well, I can tell you the day of when the premiere came out. I'm sitting there with friends, and the cinema is packed, and television, everything is there, red carpet, and of course, for me, first experience, you know. And I know when my first scene is coming up, this scene where I play this lead mafia boss in the silk suits, you know, all spiffy, and across the table is this, who's also is a big star, and we have this scene here, and my girlfriend is to my left, and da-da-da, and my henchmen are you know, sitting at the table. And I'm sitting there, and it was a profile shot of me. And for me, all I saw was my nose. I looked like it was out here, like Pinocchio or something, and I was like, oh my God, my nose, my nose.
Yeah,
that's all I saw, you know.
And you know, no one else sees your nose.
Nobody else,
That's
you know.
the whole thing. It's like,
Yeah.
I've never had that experience, even though I got a big nose. But to me, when I see myself on film, I just think, wow, that's great. You know, like it's just part of the game. You know, part of what I'm doing. But so you're critical of yourself on screen.
I certainly am critical about everything. Right. Yeah, I mean, music, whatever it is, you know.
Well, how about going to music? You had been on the stage before playing music prior to, right?
Yes, I had.
So you don't have stage fright or anything like that.
But you know, wouldn't say I have stage fright, but I certainly, for example, the last concert I gave at Carnegie Hall. Yeah. There's always these butterflies, this energy, you know, because you're waiting backstage, and they have the screen backstage, and you can see the audience, and it's a full house, and you know, you see everything, and they give you that 5-minute call time. They come back, and 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and so 5 minutes. I had 5 minutes to go, and I'm like, I know that the first piece I'm opening with, and my mind completely blanked. Wow. And I freaked out. And so I'm ready to walk on the stage, and I ran back into the practice room, because they have these practice rooms in the back of Carnegie. And I put my fingers down, I'm like, oh, okay. And I walk back, ready to go on stage, and again, it blank, and I run back in the practice room, and I put my fingers down and it's like, okay, no problem. And you know, I went on stage, and maybe the first 10 seconds, but once your fingers hit the keys, everything goes away.
Right now, and I'll tell you, I hadn't acted in 22 years until 2010. I stopped acting totally, and I got my first part by people who I met in Larchmont, and they actually had something on Comedy Central, and I was scared unbelievable. I was totally
Right.
scared. And these people, I love them. I've done 2 national commercials, a couple of regional commercials with these guys. And I got like, I was ready. I was there at Wall Street. We were filming and all this stuff. And I'm going crazy and all this stuff. And we get up and I'm going to do my scene. And I can't remember after the first word. The first word comes out. And then, but the one thing he says, listen, I wrote this thing.
There you go.
You know, it's just 2 guys talking.
Let's just
and as soon as he
improvise.
did that, all of a sudden they're setting up the shot. He said, you know, he wanted to go through the lines. As soon as that happened, you know, all of a sudden the calmness happened, and it was able, you know, we were able to communicate, and it was great. It was wonderful.
It happens to the best of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what project? I mean, I know you brought a video here. What project is that concerning your latest?
Well, no, the actual video. I mean, I'm working on a lot of projects right now. The video that you'll show is actually, I was actually the first person to be interviewed for. It's a new TV show in China.
Oh, is that the press release?
Yeah,
that
called Arrow Factory. Well, the press release I gave you was
Yes.
for this event with 3 other colleagues that I'm putting on. It's a historical event, November 27th, for Bruce Lee's 77th birthday, that we are holding at the Federal Hall National Museum on Wall Street. That's the one with George Washington in the front.
I work on Maiden Lane, so
Oh,
maybe,
okay.
maybe I should stop
You
by
should,
over there.
yeah. So it's a whole day event.
How old was he when he died?
32.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
I remember that. Remember it well.
And what did he die of?
Oh, don't ask me that question. I'm not going to go even answer that.
Conspiracy theory.
yeah, I know.
But was he like one of the best martial artists? Or how would you?
He's someone that so many of us idolized. I mean, I idolized him, you know, and read everything I could. I mean, newspaper clippings, magazine. I mean, scrapbooks I had, posters, what have you. Yeah, I mean, studying every move he made. And still today, you know, with everybody that I've met since, you know, obviously co-starring with Jackie Chan, and who was a stuntman in a couple of Bruce Lee's films.
I did not know that. So he
Yeah,
knew
he
Bruce
was a
Lee.
stuntman in Enter the Dragon. He was a stuntman in Chinese Connection.
So he must have been a kid when he was a stuntman.
He was young. He was very young, maybe 18, 19, yeah. But still, you know, for me, will always be Bruce Lee.
Right.
Yeah.
Where would you stick Jackie Chan in the?
Well, I don't even want to make.
I know you don't.
I didn't even want to make a comparison
Right.
because it's like, you know, when Bruce Lee died,
Yes.
he left this legacy. He was the one that paved the way for everybody else that came after. He was the one that opened the doors. He was the one that broke cultural barriers, because there was never ever an Asian star that would lead a Hollywood film. So he was the first ever.
I remember when he was in Green Hornet when I was a kid.
in the
And
earlier,
that
in the
was a
60s.
Great, I know. I remember watching it, and he was so cool. And that was before his breakthrough in the United States.
International film. So he was a leader in the forefront of breaking so many barriers for everybody that came after him.
So it's going to be some event, right? I mean,
yes, it's going to be. We have a proclamation from the mayor, and we have a lot of dignitaries, ambassadors coming from the UN, and
will there be other actors?
there will be a lot of other actors there. The actual special guest of honor is I had lunch with her on Sunday. Is Angela Mao Ying, who was she was the first. Basically, they called her the Queen of Kung Fu. She was the first heroine to do international martial arts, you know, film, and she played obviously. She was in Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon, playing his sister in the film, and she was a superstar in her day. And so we have her coming, and she's so sweet and humble and everything.
He taught a lot, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah,
He had
Steve
all
McQueen, James Coburn, and all these amazing stars. So yeah, so it's going to be. This event has never actually happened, and so we have the, you know. Not only is it going to be a historical landmark, one of the most famous in the country, but we, you know, have the permission, obviously, from the Bruce Lee Foundation, and we spoke with Linda Lee, his widow, and Shannon Lee, the daughter. So, you know, they won't be there, but they're very much...
Is it open to the public? Or
Yes, because this is all non-profit. Can't try to make any money off of Bruce Lee's name. No,
right.
that's a no-no.
So that's awesome.
So it's free to the public, all ages, cultures.
When is it again?
Monday, November 27th, which is his birthday.
And what time?
Well, it starts in the morning, opening ceremony at 10 a.m. and from like 10 to 12, there's a number of schools in the area that are coming, and so we're doing, one of my friends is teaching like an anti-bullying, seminar and stuff to the kids, and then there are seminars going on and talks about Bruce Lee and what he brought, and then we're going to show a film of his, and then in the evening we're going to have a reception, appetizers, refreshments, and all the who's who, the dignitaries and so forth.
So why don't you talk about the video that you brought, because I'll lead in, because we'll share it with, obviously you brought it, so we want to share it.
So yeah, it's really amazing actually, and it was done for China. It was a new show that was developed, and it's interesting because they had these kind of bites of, our attention span is getting less and less these days. It used to be you could put it together an 11-minute video, then it was a 7-minute video, then 5, and now basically 3 is around the maximum before we start wanting to look somewhere else, especially on social media. So there was the idea of these like 3.5-minute segments, and I was actually the first person, and it was really, really successful, and it's still being shown. It's over 10 million views. Wow. Yeah. Well, so for China, that's a small number, but it's a huge number in fact.
And you might get a couple more views when we show it.
Exactly.
So maybe. Can we share it?
Yeah, please.
Okay,
please.
So enjoy this video, okay? Enjoy.
When I was young, everything was about how fast I could kick, how fast I could punch. And when I met my father's older brother, who was a master of Tai Chi and Qigong, when I would watch him practice, I would say, man, that's so boring. God, it's so slow, I didn't understand what he was doing and what it was he was practicing. It took me 2 decades to realize it's about internal and about healing. My name is Vincent Lyn. My mom's from England, my father is Chinese, so I'm a best of both worlds. I got music from my mom and martial arts from my father's side of the family. The Kung Fu that has been in my father's family for many, many generations, and we can actually date it back to the beginning of the Ming Dynasty, which is 1368. It's simply my love. 1988, I moved to Hong Kong and co-starred in like some of the most famous Hong Kong films of what they call the golden era of Hong Kong film.
This guy here is Vincent.
The famous fight scene in Operation Condor, we're all wired up flying around this wind tunnel. I'm being launched through the air. Of course, my head hit the back, and of course, cracked the back of my head open. From then, one film, it was a snowball effect. But it was because of that I got into the modeling. And then I got signed with Elite, which is the biggest agency in the world. But, I look at a lot of different artists and their careers. They actually have talent not in just one area, and that happened to me. I would hear my mom playing the piano all the time, and so I got interested just by hearing. It's like air that I breathe, I couldn't be without them. Both of the art forms I've been practicing have kind of paralleled themselves. It's like a marriage between both. Focus here, there you go. Again, a little looser, So you're gonna sweep backwards first. I look at students I've had who received their first black sash, first black belt, which takes about a decade. But as I've told them, all they are, they're an advanced beginner. Tenacity, discipline. I've been doing it my whole life, yet I don't know if I'll have another 5 decades to spend, but as your maturity and life experience evolves, and we all must evolve, the playing, the practice evolves as well.
Wow, that was pretty awesome. That was
Oh, thank
great.
you.
So, 10 million views. What is that like? I mean, it must be incredible. I mean, your movies have had many people that watch it too.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
but you continue to have an audience, and
Yeah, well, that I find kind of amazing. I mean, you know, I did a concert in Latvia earlier in the year, and we did a lot of radio interviews and so forth, TV interviews, and people would come up to me and they would say, "Do you realize you have a huge audience here in Latvia and bordering Russian states?" I said, "Really?" I had no idea. It's kind of crazy, you know. And it seems to be bigger than ever because there's a whole new generation that, and I say generation of millennials or even younger, 20-year-olds that are watching those films from that Hong Kong era, where Hong Kong was putting out some of the, really the greatest films from that, what they call the golden age of Hong Kong cinema. So, I mean, they know these films better than I do, and I was in them.
Yeah, my son was a film major,
Yeah.
and he enjoyed many of the films of that era.
Right.
And it is amazing, but also with your music. I mean, when as a musician, when you look out, and I'm sure you see some famous faces out there when you have your concerts as well. What is that like? I mean, when you know that there are other artists that are there who really appreciate your music. I mean, it's good that that people appreciate it, but when other musicians or other artists,
it's humbling.
Right.
It's very humbling. One of the last concerts I gave at Carnegie, as a professor from Boston Conservatory, he's a good friend of mine. He's also a Grammy artist, who's this incredible concert pianist who plays all over the world. And for him to just say, "Oh my God, you're so awesome, man! What you do," he says, because what I do is I'm really more of a jazz pianist and a classical, but what I do is I take a lot of time takes very famous classical themes that we all know, but put them in a kind of a jazz mode.
Right.
And he says, "Man, how do you do that?" He says, "I wish I could do that." I said, "Oh, please," I said, yeah. So to hear these things from my peers and people that I have looked up to, yeah, it's amazing. It's a good feeling, of course.
And
yeah.
Have you ever thought of teaching, or do you teach?
No,
or,
teach martial arts for sure.
But not
music, I never just. No, you see, in martial arts, the thing is, if they don't do it right, I can hit them.
Right. Well, right. And I saw in
I
the
can't
video,
do that.
And in the video, you actually
Yeah, I'm working with
right, with a gentleman,
with a student. Yeah,
with a student,
a private student.
But music is something I guess you hold more personal than.
Yeah, it's it's something I've tried it. I respect coaches because when I was doing the concerts at Carnegie, I would have this classical piano coach,
Right.
and yeah, people say, "What? God, you've been playing your whole life. Why do you need a teacher? Why do you need a coach?" I said, "You still need a coach." Yeah.
But I would say I have friends who are just artists and musicians, and they weren't classically trained.
Right.
But it's like I have one friend in particular that can paint unbelievably, and he has his own genre, whatever, but he also is an unbelievable percussionist, and I don't think he took many lessons.
Right.
So the question I really am asking is that, do you think a certain tendency towards music is innate versus, I mean, you still have to learn how to play.
I think also you could say that about acting too.
Right.
There are some great actors out there who've never had an acting lesson in their life.
Right.
And they're just completely natural. I think it's the same with music.
So
too.
that's the question for a true musician, if a person's not if a person doesn't have that tendency, could you ever teach someone to become a really true? You know, in other words, I'm saying I think maybe you need that kernel of there has to be, other than the desire to learn an instrument, there has to be some, I think, innate quality.
Yeah, I mean, I can take two of my favorite jazz piano masters, Oscar Peterson and Errol Garner.
Right.
And here, Oscar Peterson was a classically trained pianist. Errol Garner couldn't read a note of music.
Right. So
but they were both masters.
So it can go either way. Is what
yeah,
you're saying.
I mean, who knows? Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's so many people. Yeah, like when I was growing up, everyone picked up a guitar or whatever.
Right.
But how many people, you know, are Jimi Hendrix? You know
Well,
what I mean? So,
there's only one. This is only one Bruce Lee. Right. So yeah.
It is amazing, but it's still fun to emulate them, right?
Of course, and we do.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have a film coming up that we could talk about really quickly. I mean, we talked about it in the last episode. Maybe
yes, we do. I mean, you know, obviously this event's coming up. This weekend I have another event with HBO. It's to do with the urban action film genre. Right. So we're doing that. I'm also working with the record producer Jerry Wonder and another Grammy artist, R&B artist, Melissa Bailey, on a new song we're recording for A Song for Peace, and so which we'll release for next year's Grammys. Right. There's that. I'm doing a concert at Carnegie next
I'm excited
season
about that one next
in
year.
October. Starting a new film in January, so called The City of Ghosts. Yeah, there's a whole heap of things I'm doing.
So you're busy, and on top of that, you're doing your UN
and
stuff.
Yeah, and I'm at the end of the year, you know, going to Uganda to see the children again. And
so, do you think you'll ever slow down, ever take a vacation?
But I always say I'm going to. I always say to my best, closest friend, I really need to stop this and slow down a bit and just focus on one thing. And every time I say that, 10 things get thrown at me.
It's exciting. I mean, it must be exciting.
But I have to. I do have to make choices though, and there are many things I do have to turn down. Right. I can't. It's impossible for me to do everything. Right. And maybe I'm still doing too much. But yeah.
Do you think? I know that you're really committed to your foundation and your not-for-profit organization. Mm-hmm. Does that keep you from doing other things you want to do in your life, or do you think that's really your focus?
Because it is the most rewarding of all.
Yeah, and some of the things that are most rewarding are the best, but some of the things that are least rewarding are the worst. And one of the least rewarding things that I have to say is that there's only one thing left to say. That's a wrap. Good night, folks.